Good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Michael for information and educational purposes only. It's just past noon here in the East Bay. This is Bitcoin. It ran up here to above 63,000 and is in pullback mode. Seems to be in a range. Some people think this is going to take off, move higher. So we'll just continue to watch that. And let us go over to our word of the day. Our word of the day is interlock, like the fingers of two collapsed hands. And it's a great job of interdigitating the old hardwood floor with the new onto our S&P 500 heat map. Things are bouncing back today after yesterday's retraction. What's pulling back today is the oil. We'll just see how long this takes to move up. We're just going to pause for 1 second here while this attempts to refresh. Well, we're back here. And here is how everything looks like. The energy is selling off. Microsoft, all the big cap techs are bouncing back today, Amazon included, Tesla, NVIDIA is up with all the semiconductor software. So that is a story there. Let's go over to our charts. Here's a dollar. Dollar is kind of flat for the day as it has moved up quite a bit. Look at silver. That pulled back yesterday and then continues its pullback. A lot of selling in silver. Take a look at gold. Silver pulls between the 20 and 50-day. Gold pulls back to the 20-day. Copper is pulling back to the 20-day as well. Uranium is holding steady. Look at Denison Mines. It's bouncing back to 200-day moving average. Look at our bond yields, which really soared yesterday, got about 4%. It tried to move higher and then they sold off. They're pretty flat for the day. Take a look at the 20-year. So the bonds are still about 4.03% yield and 3.19% yield on the 20-year. Take a look at the bonds themselves. They just continue their sharp sell-off. Not sure if people are moving into the stock market or what they're doing with that money, but they're definitely moving out of bonds right at the moment. Take a look at VIX, volatility index. Tried to move higher and then sold off, came back to 2137, still kind of elevated where we've been. Where we're looking at 2688 is our target on the VIX. And the S&P 500 is bouncing a little bit today. The equal weight is bouncing slightly as well off of the 20-day moving average. Our NASDAQ is bouncing a little stronger, 1.32% up on the NASDAQ. And the equal weight on the NASDAQ is up 0.68%. The small capitalization index is up. We can take a look at the mid cap. It's bouncing off the 20-day, and the Dow Jones is up 0.24%. Take a look at the industrials. They're doing a little better than the Dow Jones. They're up 0.22%. XLF, we got a JP Morgan at the end of the week has got their financials coming out. Communications, bouncing 0.6. Real estate, got a little bit of a bounce to get above the 50-day moving average. We'll see if that rate continues to kind of pressure them. Utilities, hanging out at the 20-day. Consumer discretionary, where Amazon and Tesla are, got a nice bounce today. Consumer staples got a little bit of a bounce. And healthcare up about 0.5% today. Look at our biotech up 1.17. Up 0.7% on the other biotech index. Infrastructure holding steady, pretty flat base right there. We got a number of really tight closes there. Semiconductors, looks like they're moving higher. They're up 1.5%. China, it's big sell-off today in China in the K-Web internet. Look at that big gap down. Futu had been leading this for a while, so got a big gap down on Futu. We'll see if it fills that gap. Yeah, right after the institutional ant right above here. You can't quite see it. FXI is doing a little better. It was doing better earlier, and it is turned tail right now. And let us look at KBE, our banking, regional banks, insurance. Taking a little bit of a hit yesterday with the storms on the East Coast. Building materials down a little bit. Mining and metals is gapping down. And the home builders are bouncing just like real estate. And now we're going to go over to our news. And move the page, everything for a second. Maybe it'll come up now. Here we go. So first on the list is Pepsi. EPS $2.31 versus consensus of $2.29. And revenue of $23.32 billion versus $23.76 billion. So year-over-year quarter. Boston Beer authorized $400 million buyback increase, and they're up 0.4% on that news. General Motors is hosting 2024 Investor Day. The event begins at 1:45 Eastern time today. It did move up earlier, and then it's selling off. Penn Gaming said it expects Q3 retail operations adjustment of EBITDA in range of 465 million to 475 million, and raises interactive adjusted EBITDA loss for third quarter outlook 90 to 100 million from estimate of 125.2 million. They bounced slightly on that news and sell off to, they're up 0.22%. Uber Technologies will roll out an AI assistant powered by OpenAI's technology to help drivers transition to electric vehicles as part of its efforts to lower emissions. And they're up 2.32%. On to energy, industrial, and materials. Honeywell International plans to spin off its advanced materials business as it continues to simplify its strategic focus, and they rise in that news at 1.88%. MDU Resources to replace Chuy's, CHUY, in the S&P 600 at the open of 1011. Darden Restaurants is acquiring Chuy's Holdings in a deal expected to be completed soon. And a gap up in MDU Resources. Take a look at Darden's. They're down on that acquisition news. Technique FMC awarded IEPCI contract for British Petroleum's Greenfield 20K development in Paleogene, contract value between 250 and 500 million. And they sold off initially, and they are bouncing off of the 10-day moving average. On to Dominion Energy. They're off slightly. Dominion, American Electric Power. First Energy reached joint planning agreement to propose regional transmission projects across PJM footprint. Watch for shares of Power. And they're moving up 1.5% today. Prim up just 0.71%. Mastech pretty flat for the day. And WCC on headlines. On to, let's see, shares of CG. Reuters reported the Biden administration is working on plans to bring additional decommissioned nuclear power reactors back online to meet the soaring demand for emissions-free electricity, according to the climate advisor Ali Zaidi. Shares of CEG, VST, CW, BWXT among names potentially impacted by the news. And I'll just add one more. We had looked at this before. Nano nuclear energy had been rising up, pulling back to the 10-day moving average. So let us go to financials. A firm upgraded to buy from neutral at BTI. It is clearing both the 10 and 20-day moving averages right at the moment. American Express pulling back to the 20-day. Ares Management has agreed to pay up to $5.2 billion to buy the international arm of real estate investment manager GLP Capital Partners, and one of the largest combinations in the private investment industry in recent years. So that is pulling back to the 20-day moving average. On to healthcare. Black Diamond Therapeutics announces restructuring plan to focus resources on BDTX 1535 and extend cash runway. Continues to fall. And we're going to bring up some news. Let's see. See if I can bring up this news on Scholar Rock. This was a big mover yesterday. I said I'd follow up with some news on this. The reason for the move on Scholar Rock yesterday. They met their primary goal in the test phase for functional test SMA. So that is the reason by the big move on that. SMA patients with petagromab compared with the placebo at week 52. The metric used for measuring the same was the gold standard Hammersmith Functional Motor Scale expanded, which is HFMSE. So it showed meaningful and consistent improvements in both the main efficacy group and the exploratory group, ages 2 to 21. So that's the reason for that move yesterday. And we go back to our charts. Procept Biorobotics said the FDA gave the go-ahead to the company's pivotal clinical trial comparing aquablation therapy to radical prostatectomy. So that is bouncing up 6.39% today. Just gonna move my picture in case that's getting in the way. And Sage Therapeutics shares slide after announced top-line results from Lightwave 12-week phase 2 placebo-controlled study to evaluate the effects of Nemidor in participants with mild cognitive impairment or mild dementia due to Alzheimer's disease. So that is sliding. This continues to be a penny stock. On to technology, media, and telecom. Samsung Electronics. See if that comes up. It does not. Warned its Q3 profit would come in below market expectations, said its AI chip business with unidentified major customers was hit by a delay, while Chinese chip rivals increased supplies of conventional chips, contributing to the decline in its semiconductor earnings. Onto DocuSign to replace MDU resources in the S&P 400 at the open on 10/11, and it jumps into the pivot zone, up 7.31%. It had been kind of working on base, the blue bars. So that's kind of what happened over here. Onto Microsoft, outperforming Oppenheimer, and it is bouncing on that news at 1.14%. And finally, Match Group announced the appointment of Stephen Bailey as a CFO effective March 1st, 2025. Gary Swidler will transition out of his CFO role on that date and continue in the position of president of Match Group. Match Group is bouncing off the 50-day moving average, up 1.07%. Let's go to our daily activity. What is up 10% on 200% increase in volume. Robinhood to the profit zone, up 10%, 211% increase in volume. So Leno Therapeutics is bouncing up 10.75%, had bounced into the pivot and then had some profit taking. PTC Therapeutics, wow, look at that move, up almost 19%, moved into the pivot zone. And Donald Trump Media and Telecom continues on the move. Yesterday, it has crossed its 50-day moving average. Got huge volume here and here. Look at all this volume across there. So that is up 19% today. What are we currently doing in our accounts? At NVIDIA continues its move, working on the right side of its base. Let's see if it gets up to the pivot area. It's up 4.12% today. Also in the semiconductor area, A-Lab. I'm just going to pull up our handy chart. A-Lab is pulled back to the 20-day as we kind of predicted, forming a handle, and it is moving up. The volume's kind of light. The volume on this day was pretty strong and is kind of petered out. And Kava Mediterranean Grill on the covered call. Futu, big gap down, bouncing off the 10-day. We just continue to hold that one. MSC, still have the options on this one. Pull back to the 20-day moving average right here. Elf Beauty, we still have the December options. Got a little bit of a bounce here, but we really need to see some buying before there's anything getting any interest there. BRT continues to hold up in the pivot zone, up 0.3% today. Reddit last week had its pivot, pulled down yesterday, tried to break out further, and it's retraced. It's up 0.47% today. Carpenter Technology up 1.28% in the specialty metals, cobalt, nickel, and titanium area. Oracle bouncing up. Looks like it has cleared this area right here. It's 173.86 at 2.29%. You could put on option on MicroStrategy. It's moving up close to 3%. BitX, I'm thinking of transitioning out of BitX into MicroStrategy. We still have our covered calls on BitX, and they're working pretty well. And Turo got a nice bounce today, up to 132. Dave got a nice bounce as well. Looks like it's breaking out of this kind of tight area right in here. Yeah, issue still looks like it's this first base. I guess you'd call this institutional base. It's up 3% today. Got a little volatility yesterday, but it's bouncing back a little bit today, and that's currently what we're doing. This is Mornings with Michael for information and educational purposes only. Hope everybody has a great day, and we'll catch you back here on Wednesday. Mornings with Michael is for information and educational purposes only. It's your responsibility to do your own due diligence. Go out there and work on your activities and your goals. And if we can help you with any of your financial goals, please let us know.